Welcome to another edition of Adulting with Addie. My name is Addye Buckley-Burnell. I'm the Associate Director of Career Development in the University Career Center, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about envelopes. This is a real opportune time for us to have this discussion since it's right around the time for election season. And if anyone is needing to send in absentee ballots to make sure that their vote is counting this election season, now is the time to make sure we know how. So let's talk a little bit about envelope writing. Some of you, of course, have received letters in the mail. I'm sure most of you have received things in the mail, but maybe you haven't had as much exposure to how to actually send anything out. So here is the basic anatomy of an envelope. What I want you to see here is that the stamp will always go on the right. Word to the wise, forever stamps, or ones that don't have an actual number value on it, are going to stay legitimate forever. What that means is that even if stamp prices change, forever stamps do not need additional postage. They will be sufficient for your first class mail. Now for typical mail, an envelope, you'll typically only need one stamp. But sometimes if it weighs more, you may need more. And in those situations, you have the option of either weighing it at home or at a post office and seeing how much additional postage might be needed. But typically an envelope will be one stamp unless it is a large envelope or a square envelope. Square envelopes actually require additional postage. Not really sure why, but they do. So just be aware of that going in. One stamp is typically going to be sufficient. Now, when we are addressing an envelope, the person to whom you are writing this letter or sending this document is going to go in the middle here. Now, sometimes it won't be to an actual person, it'll be just to an actual organization. And in those situations, in those situations, this first and last name piece will not be on there. It'll be simply the company name. You'll need a street address or a P.O. box address. Now that will go next. If it is a P.O. box, that means a post office box. And that means that that mail is being sent directly to a post office box where somebody will come retrieve it. In that situation, there will not be a street address. And so don't be surprised by that. P.O. box is sufficient with city, state, and zip code. Otherwise, if there's things like an apartment number, a suite number, it may need 2 lines for that street address. So remember to make it very clear, easy to read, number, street, lane, court, road, whatever that case may be. The second line would end up being a suite number, an apartment number if needed, if you need that extra space. And then you'll go for city. You will write out the full name of the city, comma, an abbreviation for the state. Now, sometimes that can be a little tricky. You probably know your state abbreviation, but for states you have never written to, you probably wouldn't. And a quick Google search will get you this actual abbreviation. So you'll need to abbreviate that. It's a 2-letter abbreviation. And then a zip code. Sometimes a zip code is 5 numbers, that's typical. Sometimes there's a dash with additional numbers. If there's a dash with additional numbers, try to include that because it makes it easier for our sorting system to work, all right? So all of this information needs to be on there. You will sometimes see the zip code underneath the city and state. Most postal workers will tell you that frustrates them. So ideally you'll want to keep it on that same line, but if it needs to go underneath, just make sure it's clear and concise. Make sure this is easy to read. Make sure if there's directional pieces like west, north, south, east, or road, court, lane, that they're clearly written because that will make a difference in your letters getting to where they need to go. If you need to, you can type these out or make them on a label as well, but they're typically going to be centered in the middle of the envelope. Now the top left is going to be your return information. First and last name ideally, but at least your last name. Street address, city, state, zip code. Very simple. All right, so this is if in case there isn't enough postage, in case you have the wrong address, in case there's something that happens where your letter gets opened, the actual letter, it will get back to you. So that's why it's considered a return address. Important to include. Now, some people will choose to write this on the flap of the envelope, and that is okay to do. So if you flipped over the envelope and put it there, you can do that. But most of the time, we're going to put it in the top left corner. All right. Now, there are some specific situations that you'll want to know about. If this is a formal letter, we're going to make sure we're going to include a Ms., Mr., Doctor in that first and last name information, or just Ms., Mr., Doctor in the instead of a first name. If it's a family, you can say things like the Smiths, the Burnells, whatever the case may be. Perfectly acceptable, and as long as it's matching the name of the resident, you should be all right. Now, if you are writing to an individual who is within an organization, you can either have it in this format, or you could have the name of that individual and then say C/O in front of the company name. So care of can be appropriate. If there is something that is in particular reference to, some people will even have a reference line at the bottom, RE, with information, but that's not as common any longer. So this is your basic envelope format. I hope that was helpful for you. I know it can be very frustrating when you're trying to get something out and you have to look this stuff up. So just a quick reminder of how you can do this. Remember to be voting this election season, and the time to apply for your absentee ballots is now. So this is a great time to get started in writing out these documents. Have a great day, and if you have any questions, contact us in the University Career Center.